Mary Johnson wiped down the last table in her small diner as the storm outside grew worse. The wind howled against the windows, and rain hit the glass like tiny bullets. She had been running Johnson's Diner on Haven's Rest for 3 years now, and she loved every minute of it. The mining colony was small, with only a few thousand people, but it felt like home. The diner sat on the main street, right between the general store and the communications center. It was not fancy, just 12 tables and a counter with 8 stools. The walls were painted yellow, and she had hung pictures of earth flowers everywhere. The smell of coffee and fresh bread always filled the air. Mary was 42 years old, with short brown hair and kind eyes. She had come to Haven's Rest after her husband died in a mining accident on another world. Starting over had been hard, but the diner gave her purpose. She cooked for the miners, the families, and the occasional alien trader who stopped by tonight was different, though. The storm was the worst she had seen since arriving. The weather system had come from nowhere, and the colony's weather station said it would last for days. Most people had gone home early, leaving the streets empty. Mary locked the front door and turned off the lights. She was about to head upstairs to her small apartment when she heard a loud crash from behind the building. It sounded like something heavy had fallen into the storage area where she kept extra supplies. She grabbed a flashlight and her raincoat. The back door was heavy, and the wind tried to push it closed as she stepped outside. The rain soaked through her coat in seconds. She pointed the flashlight toward the storage area and gasped. Something huge was lying on the ground between the storage shed and the diner's back wall. At first, she thought it might be a piece of debris from the storm, but then she saw it move. It was breathing. Mary stepped closer, her heart pounding. The creature was massive, at least 20 feet long. Its skin looked like dark metal, but it was covered in what looked like scales. 2 large wings were folded against its sides, and she could see they were torn and bleeding. A long neck ended in a head that looked like the dragons from old Earth stories. The creature's eyes opened as her flashlight beam hit its face. They were golden, like liquid fire, and filled with pain. Mary had seen pictures of draconians before, but never in person. They were one of the oldest races in the galaxy, and most humans only heard stories about them. The dragon tried to lift its head, but collapsed back to the ground. Mary could see several deep wounds along its side, and dark blood pooled beneath it. Whatever had happened, this creature was dying. Mary knew she should call the colony security. The draconians were powerful, and some people said they were dangerous. But looking at the wounded creature, all she could see was pain and fear. The same look she had seen in wounded animals back on Earth. She made a decision that would change everything. "It's okay," she said softly, moving closer. "I'm going to help you." The dragon's golden eyes focused on her. It made a sound that might have been words, but Mary could not understand them. She held up her hands to show she was not harmed. "I'm Mary," she said. "I run the diner here. You're hurt, and I want to help." The dragon watched her carefully. When she reached out slowly to touch its wounded side, it did not pull away. The scales felt warm, and she could feel the creature's rapid heartbeat. Mary ran back into the diner and gathered everything she could find: medical supplies, towels, blankets, and a bottle of whiskey for cleaning wounds. She also grabbed some of the pain medication she kept for emergencies. The rain was still pouring when she returned. The dragon had not moved. Mary knelt beside it and began cleaning the wounds. The creature flinched at first, but then seemed to understand she was trying to help. "These are deep," Mary said, more to herself than to the dragon. "But I think I can help." She worked for over an hour in the rain, cleaning and bandaging the wounds as best she could. The dragon watched her the entire time, those golden eyes never leaving her face. When she was done, Mary sat back on her heels, soaked and exhausted. "There," she said. "That should help for now, but we need to get you somewhere dry." The dragon made another sound, and this time Mary thought she heard something like, "Thank you," in the strange words. Getting the dragon inside was the hardest part. Even wounded, it was incredibly heavy. Mary had to move several tables and chairs to make room in the storage area behind the kitchen. Slowly, with the dragon's help, they managed to get it inside. Mary brought every blanket she owned and made a bed on the floor. The dragon settled down with a sound that might have been relief. She brought water in a large pot, and the dragon drank gratefully. "Are you hungry?" Mary asked. The dragon nodded, a very human gesture that surprised her. Mary went to the kitchen and cooked everything she had: soup, bread, some leftover roast beef, and vegetables. She was not sure what dragons ate, but she figured food was food. The dragon ate everything she brought, using what looked like careful control to keep from accidentally hurting her with its large teeth. When it was done, it looked at Mary with something that might have been gratitude. "You're welcome," Mary said, sitting down beside the huge creature. "What's your name?" The dragon made several sounds, and Mary tried to repeat them. After a few attempts, she managed something that sounded like Zarathel. "Zarathel," Mary repeated. "That's a beautiful name." "I'm Mary." Zarathel nodded and made a sound that was clearly trying to say, "Mary." It came out rough and strange, but Mary smiled. "Close enough," she said. The dragon's eyes were getting heavy. Mary could see that the pain medication was working. She brought more blankets and made sure Zarathel was comfortable. "Rest now," Mary said. "You're safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you." Zarathel's eyes closed, and soon the dragon was breathing deeply in sleep. Mary sat there for a while, watching the creature that had crashed into her quiet life. She knew she was taking a huge risk. If the colony authorities found out she was hiding a draconian, there would be questions she could not answer. But as she looked at the peaceful expression on Zarathel's face, Mary knew she had made the right choice. Whatever had brought this creature to her door, whatever dangers might come, she would face them. Some things were more important than safety. Mary quietly cleaned up the medical supplies and went upstairs to her apartment. She set her alarm for early morning so she could check on Zarathel before anyone else was awake. As she lay in bed listening to the storm, she wondered what tomorrow would bring. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside Johnson's diner, a dragon slept peacefully. For the first time in days, protected by the kindness of a stranger who had asked for nothing in return. Mary woke up before dawn, just as she had every day for the past week. The storm had ended 3 days ago, but her secret guest was still recovering in the storage room. She dressed quietly and crept downstairs to check on Zarathel. The dragon was awake, sitting up carefully and looking much better. The wounds had stopped bleeding, and the golden eyes were bright and alert. Mary smiled as she entered the room. "Good morning," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" Zarathel made a sound that Mary had learned meant better. Over the past few days, they had developed a simple way to communicate. The dragon was clearly intelligent and was trying to learn human words, while Mary was picking up some of the dragon's language. "Hungry?" Mary asked. Zarathel nodded. Mary had discovered that the dragon ate almost everything she cooked, but seemed to especially like meat and soup. She went to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast as she cooked. Mary thought about how much her life had changed in just 1 week. She had to be very careful about her routine now. She opened the diner at the normal time and served her regular customers, but she always made extra food for Zarathel. She had told everyone that she was doing some repairs in the storage room, which kept people from going back there. The hardest part was acting normal. Bill Henderson, who ran the general store, had noticed that she was buying more food than usual. Linda Patterson, who worked at the communication center, had asked if she was feeling all right because she looked tired. Mary had to come up with excuses for everything, but she did not regret her decision. Every day, Zarathil grew stronger. And every day, Mary learned something new about her unusual guest. Mary brought breakfast to the storage room on a large tray. Zarathil was trying to stand, testing her injured leg. The dragon was enormous when fully upright, her head nearly touching the ceiling. "Careful," Mary said. "You're still healing." Zarathil settled back down and looked at the food Mary had brought. There was scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and a large pot of beef soup. The dragon ate carefully, and Mary noticed that she was getting better at using her claws to handle the dishes without breaking them. "Mary," Zarathil said suddenly, the word coming out clearer than before. Mary looked up in surprise. "Yes?" Zarathil pointed to herself and said something in her own language. Then she pointed to Mary and said, "Help, why?" Mary set down her coffee cup and thought about how to explain. "Because you needed help," she said simply. "And I could help you." Zarathil tilted her head, clearly confused. She said something else in her language, and Mary caught a word that sounded like enemy. "Enemy?" Mary asked. "No, you're not my enemy. I don't even know you." Zarathil struggled with the words. "My people ... your people. Not friends." Mary nodded. She knew that humans and draconians did not have much contact. The dragons were an ancient race that kept to themselves, and most humans considered them mysterious and possibly dangerous. "Maybe. Our people aren't friends," Mary said. "But that doesn't mean we can't be friends." Zarathil stared at her for a long moment. Then she made a sound that Mary had learned was laughter. "You strange human." "I've been told that before," Mary said with a smile. Over the next few hours, as Mary cleaned the diner and prepared for the lunch crowd, Zarathil began to tell her story. The dragon's English was getting better every day, and Mary was learning to understand the mixture of human words and dragon sounds. Zarathil was not just any dragon. She was a commander in the Draconian Imperial Fleet, in charge of a group of warships. Her people were fighting a terrible enemy called the Void Swarm, machines that destroyed everything in their path and consumed entire star systems. "We fight alone," Zarathil explained. "Many years. Many ships lost. Many friends dead." Mary listened with growing horror as Zarathil described the war. The Void Swarm was like a plague, spreading across the galaxy and destroying everything alive. The dragons had been fighting them for decades, but they were losing. "My ship attacked," Zarathil continued. "I escape in small craft. Engine fails. Crash here in storm." "What about your crew?" Mary asked. Zarathil's eyes grew sad. "Some escape, some not." "I not know." Mary reached out and gently touched the dragon's large claw. "I'm sorry." Zarathil looked at Mary's small hand on her claw. "You not fear me?" "Should I?" Mary asked. "Most humans fear dragons, think we are monsters." Mary shook her head. "You're not a monster. You're a person who was hurt and needed help." Zarathil was quiet for a long time. "My people, we are proud. We do not ask for help. We do not show weakness." "That sounds lonely," Mary said. "Yes," Zarathil agreed. "Very lonely." Mary had to leave to serve the lunch crowd, but she promised to return soon. As she worked in the diner, she thought about what Zarathil had told her. An entire race fighting a war alone, too proud to ask for help, watching their friends die one by one. When she returned to the storage room, she found Zarathil looking at one of her Earth flower pictures that had fallen off the wall. "Beautiful," the dragon said, holding the picture carefully in her claws. "They're roses," Mary said. "My favorite flowers." I had a garden full of them back on Earth. Earth flowers not grow here? Zarathil asked. No, the soil is wrong, and the weather is too harsh. But I like to remember them. Zarathil studied the picture. You miss home. Sometimes, Mary admitted. But this is home now. Why you come here? This small place? Mary sat down and told Zarathil about her husband, about the accident, about starting over. She talked about building the diner, about the people she served, about finding a new purpose. In life, you help people, Zarathil said when Mary finished. Is what you do? I guess so, Mary said. I like taking care of people, making them feel welcome. Zarathil was quiet for a moment. My people, we have no place like this. No place where strangers come to eat together and talk. What do you have? Mary asked. Military stations. Command. Centers. War rooms. Zarathil's voice was sad. Always preparing for battle. Always thinking of duty. That sounds hard, Mary said. It is all we know, Zarathil replied. For many generations we fight. We forget how to do other things. Mary had an idea. Would you like to help me in the kitchen tomorrow? I could show you how to cook. Zarathil looked surprised. You would trust me with your food? Of course. Mary said, You've been eating it for a week. I think you'd be a good cook. For the first time since Mary had found her, Zarathil smiled. It was a strange expression on a dragon's face, but it was unmistakably a smile. I would like that, Zarathil said. That evening, Mary brought dinner to the storage room as usual. But this time, she stayed to eat with Zarathil. They talked about their different worlds, their different lives, and their different dreams. When I am healed, Zarathil said, I must go back to war. I know, Mary said quietly. You could come with me, Zarathil said suddenly. See the galaxy. See wonders you cannot imagine. Mary smiled. That's kind of you to offer, but this is where I belong. This little diner, these people, this is my life. But you could have so much more, Zarathil insisted. I have everything I need, Mary said. Good food, honest work, and now a friend who happens to be a dragon. Zarathil looked at her with those golden eyes. Friend, she repeated the word. Carefully, yes, friend. As Mary cleaned up the dishes, she realized that something had changed in both of them. Zarathil was no longer just a wounded creature she was helping. She was a friend, someone Mary cared about and would miss when she left. And from the way Zarathil looked at her, Mary could tell the dragon felt the same way. Mary, Zarathil said as Mary prepared to leave. Thank you. Not just for healing my body, for ... for showing me what kindness looks like. Mary paused at the door. You don't need to thank me. That's what friends do. As Mary went upstairs to her apartment, she wondered how much time they had left together. Zarathil was getting stronger every day, and soon she would be well enough to leave. The thought made Mary's heart ache in a way she had not felt since her husband died, but she pushed the sadness away. She had tonight and tomorrow, and maybe a few more days after that. She would make the most of the time they had, and when Zarathil left, Mary would have the memory of the dragon who had become her friend. 3 months had passed since Zarathil left Haven's Rest. Mary tried to keep busy with the diner, but she missed her dragon friend terribly. Every morning, she would look toward the sky, hoping to see a familiar shape flying overhead. But the sky remained empty. Life in the colony had returned to normal. The mining operations continued. Families went about their daily routines, and Mary served meals to the same faces she had known for years. But something felt different. The diner felt emptier somehow, even when it was full of customers. Mary had kept the small communication device that Zarathil had given her before leaving. It was about the size of her hand, made of some kind of metal that felt warm to the touch. Zarathil had shown her how to use it. but Mary had never tried. She kept it in her pocket, more as a reminder of her friend than anything else. "Call if you ever need help," Zarathil had said. "I will come." Mary had laughed at the time. What kind of help could I possibly need that would require a dragon? Now, as she looked out the diner window at the peaceful colony streets, those words seemed like something from a dream. What could possibly threaten their quiet little world? She got her answer on a Tuesday morning in early spring. Mary was preparing breakfast when the colony's emergency sirens began to wail. The sound was loud and harsh, echoing off the buildings and sending chills down her spine. She had only heard those sirens during monthly tests. They were never supposed to sound for real. People began running past the diner windows, heading for the emergency shelters. Mary stepped outside and saw Bill Henderson from the general store rushing toward the communications center. "Bill," she called out. "What's happening?" "Ships!" He shouted back without stopping. Unknown ships coming in fast. Mary's heart began to race. She ran inside and turned on the emergency broadcast system. The colony administrator's voice crackled through the speakers. "This is an emergency announcement. Multiple unknown vessels have entered our system and are approaching havens. Rest. All civilians are to report to emergency shelters immediately. I repeat, this is not a drill." Mary looked around her empty diner. Through the windows, she could see families hurrying toward the shelters with their children. The colony's small security force was setting up defensive positions, but Mary knew they would not be able to stop a serious attack. She was about to lock up the diner and head for the shelters when she heard a new sound. A deep, mechanical humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The sound grew louder and louder until the windows began to rattle. Mary stepped outside and looked up at the sky. What she saw made her blood run cold. Massive shapes were descending through the clouds. They were not like any ships she had ever seen. These vessels were dark and angular, covered in what looked like black metal. They moved with a strange flowing motion that reminded Mary of insects or snakes. The ships were enormous, each one the size of a city block. As they came closer, Mary could see smaller shapes breaking away from them. The smaller craft moved fast, darting toward the colony like deadly birds of prey. The colony's defense systems opened fire, sending streaks of light toward the approaching ships. But the enemy vessels absorbed the attacks without any visible damage. They kept coming, their humming growing louder and more frightening. Mary knew she should run to the shelters, but her feet would not move. She stood frozen, watching as the first enemy craft landed in the colony's main square. The ship's hull opened, and things began to pour out. They were not alive, Mary realized with horror. They were machines, but they moved like living creatures. Each one was about the size of a person, but they crawled on multiple legs like spiders. Their bodies were covered in the same black metal as the ships, and they had glowing red eyes that swept back and forth as they searched for targets. The colony's security forces opened fire on the machines, but their weapons barely scratched the metal surfaces. The creatures moved fast, swarming over the defenders like a tide of darkness. More ships landed throughout the colony. The mechanical creatures spread out, moving from building to building. Mary watched in horror as they began to tear apart everything in their path. They were not just attacking people, they were consuming everything. Metal, stone, even the plants in the colony's small park disappeared into their mechanical mouths. Mary finally found her voice. "The Void Swarm," she whispered. This was what Zarathil had told her about. The enemy that had been destroying worlds across the galaxy had finally reached Haven's Rest, and there was nothing the small colony could do to stop them. The creatures were getting closer to the diner. Mary could see them moving down the street, tearing apart the general store and the communications center. She had maybe minutes before they reached her dot. She ran inside and grabbed the communication device from her pocket. Her hands were shaking as she tried to remember how Zarathil had shown her to use it. She pressed the center of the device and spoke into it. "Zarathil," she said, her voice cracking with fear. "I need help. The Void Swarm is here. They're destroying everything." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to glow with a soft golden light, and Zarathil's voice came through, clear and strong. "Mary, you are in danger?" "Yes," Mary said, tears streaming down her face. "They're here. The machines you told me about. They're destroying the colony." "How many people?" Zarathil asked. "I don't know. Maybe 2,000. Most are in the emergency shelters, but I don't think the shelters will protect them." "Where are you?" "Still in the diner. I couldn't leave. There are people who couldn't make it to the shelters. The old people, the sick ones. They're hiding in the buildings." There was a pause. Then Zarathil's voice came back stronger than before. "Mary, listen to me. Gather as many people as you can near diner. Make it a safe place. Help is coming." "But how can you help? You're just one dragon, and there are so many of them." "I am not just one dragon," Zarathil said, and Mary could hear something fierce in her voice. "I am a commander, and I have a fleet. Hold your position, my friend. Protect those who need protection. We are coming." The communication device went silent, and Mary stood alone in her diner as the sounds of destruction grew closer. She could hear the mechanical creatures tearing apart the building next door. Mary made a decision. She ran to the front door and threw it open. Outside, she could see people running in panic. Some were trying to reach the shelters, but the creatures were between them and safety. "Here," Mary shouted. "Come to the diner." An elderly couple who lived 3 blocks away heard her and changed direction. Behind them, a family with 2 small children was running from one of the mechanical creatures. Mary waved them toward the diner. "Hurry," she called out. The family reached the diner just as the creature rounded the corner. Mary slammed the door, shut and locked it. Through the window, she could see the machine studying the building, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. More people arrived over the next few minutes. Mary opened the back door and called to anyone who could hear her. Soon the diner was full of frightened colonists. There were elderly people, families with children, and several people who had been hurt trying to escape the creatures. Mary moved through the crowd, offering comfort and checking on the injured. She brought out all the food she had and made sure everyone had something to eat and drink. Even in the middle of the crisis, she could not help but take care of people. "What are those things?" asked Linda Patterson, the woman who worked at the communications center. "They're called the Void Swarm," Mary explained. "They're machines that consume everything in their path. They've been destroying worlds across the galaxy." "How do you know that?" asked Bill Henderson. Mary hesitated. She had never told anyone about Zarathil. "A friend told me," she said finally. "Outside." The mechanical creatures were getting closer. Mary could hear them moving around the building, testing the walls and windows. The diner's walls were strong, but she did not know how long they would hold. "What are we going to do?" asked a young mother, holding her baby close. Mary thought about Zarathil's words. Help was coming, but she did not know when. All she could do was protect the people in her diner and hope her friend would keep her promise. "We're going to stay together," Mary said firmly. "We're going to take care of each other. And we're going to wait for help." "Help from where?" Bill asked. "The colony's defenses are gone. The communications center is destroyed. No one even knows we're under attack." Mary looked out the window at the dark ships filling the sky. "Help is coming," she said quietly. "I know it is." The creatures began to pound on the diner's walls. The building shook with each impact, and Mary could hear the metal and stone starting to crack. The people inside huddled together, and several children began to cry. Mary stood in the center of the room, surrounded by her neighbors and friends. She thought about Zarathil, somewhere out in the vast galaxy, racing to their aid. She thought about the dragon who had become her friend, who had promised to help if she ever needed it. "Hold on," she whispered to the frightened people around her. "Just hold on a little longer." Outside, the mechanical creatures continued their attack on the diner. But inside, Mary Johnson stood guard over her people, waiting for a miracle she hoped would come in the form of golden eyes and beating wings. The pounding on the diner walls was getting stronger. Mary could see cracks appearing in the reinforced concrete, and she knew they did not have much time left. The mechanical creatures of the Void Swarm were determined to break through. Inside the diner, 43 people huddled together in terror. Mary moved between them, offering what comfort she could. She had given the children her few remaining toys and games to keep them distracted. The adults tried to stay calm, but Mary could see the fear in their eyes. "The back wall is starting to give way," whispered Tom Bradley, a miner who had been checking the building's weak spots. "Maybe 10 more minutes before they break through." Mary nodded and looked around at the faces of her neighbors. These were good people who had never hurt anyone. They did not deserve to die like this, consumed by machines that felt nothing and cared about nothing. The emergency lights flickered as something hit the power lines outside. In the dim light, Mary could see baby Sarah crying in her mother's arms. Old Mr. Peterson sat in the corner, his heart medication clutched in his shaking hands. The Johnson family from down the street held each other close, their 2 young boys, trying to be brave. "Mary," called Linda Patterson from near the front window. "You need to see this." Mary carefully made her way to the window and looked outside. The mechanical creatures had stopped their attack on the diner. Instead, they were all looking up at the sky, their red eyes glowing brighter. Mary followed their gaze and gasped. Sky was changing. What had been empty black space was now filled with lights. Hundreds of them, growing brighter and closer with each passing second. The lights were not the harsh white of the Void Swarm ships. These were different, warmer, golden. "What is that?" Linda asked. Mary pressed her face to the window, hope beginning to bloom in her chest. "I think," she said softly, "it's help." The lights resolved into shapes as they came closer. Ships, hundreds of ships, each one sleek and beautiful, with wings that caught the light like metal feathers. They were nothing like the ugly, angular vessels of the Void Swarm. At the front of the fleet was a ship larger than the others. It was magnificent, with golden markings along its hull and wings that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Even from the ground, Mary could see the power and grace of the vessel. "Those are Draconian ships," breathed Bill Henderson, who had served in the colonial fleet years ago. "But there are so many of them." The lead ship was the first to open fire. Beams of golden energy lanced down from orbit, striking the Void Swarm vessels with devastating precision. The black ships, which had seemed so invincible just minutes before, began to explode in brilliant flashes of light. More Draconian ships joined the attack. The sky filled with golden fire as the Dragon fleet unleashed everything they had on the invaders. The mechanical creatures on the ground looked up in confusion as their motherships began to fall from the sky. But Mary was watching the largest ship, the one with the golden markings. As she watched, something separated from its hull. A smaller shape, but one that moved with purpose and grace. It was diving toward the surface, toward the colony, toward the diner. "Everyone get back from the windows," Mary shouted. The shape hit the ground outside the diner with enough force to shake the building. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment, Mary could not see anything. Then the dust settled, and she saw her. Zarathiel stood in the street outside the diner, but she was not alone. Behind her were 6 other dragons, each one armed with weapons that glowed with the same golden energy as the ships above. They were magnificent creatures, their scales shining like armor, their eyes burning with righteous fury. The mechanical creatures of the Void Swarm turned to face this new threat. They scuttled forward on their metal legs, their red eyes focusing on the dragons. But they had never faced anything like this before. Zaradel raised one clawed hand, and energy crackled between her fingers. When she spoke, her voice carried across the battlefield like thunder. "You have made a mistake," she said in perfect English. Her words meant for Mary as much as for the enemy. "You have attacked those under my protection." The lead mechanical creature lunged at Zarathiel. The dragon commander did not even move. She simply pointed at the machine, and it disappeared in a flash of golden light. The battle that followed was unlike anything Mary had ever seen. The dragons moved with incredible speed and power, their energy weapons cutting through the mechanical creatures like they were made of paper. The creatures tried to fight back, but they were no match for the ancient warriors. One of the dragons, a massive male with silver markings, landed directly in front of the diner. He looked through the window at the frightened people inside, and his fierce expression softened. "You are safe now," he said in heavily accented English. "The human Mary Johnson has called for aid, and we have answered." Mary felt tears streaming down her face. Zarathiel had not just come herself. She had brought her entire fleet. The battle was over in minutes. The mechanical creatures were destroyed, and the Void Swarm ships in orbit were either destroyed or fleeing. The immediate threat was gone, but Mary knew the real miracle was just beginning. Zarathiel approached the diner, her golden eyes searching for Mary through the window. When their eyes met, the dragon smiled that strange, wonderful smile Mary remembered so well. "Mary," Zarathiel said, her voice gentle now. "Are you hurt?" Mary unlocked the door and stepped outside. The street was littered with the remains of the mechanical creatures, but she only had eyes for her friend. "I'm fine," she said. "We're all fine, thanks to you." Zarathiel looked at the diner, then at the people peering out through the windows. "You saved them," she said. "You gathered them together and protected them." "I just did what anyone would do," Mary said. "No," Zarathiel replied firmly. "You did what you do. You saw people who needed help, and you helped them." The other dragons had finished securing the area and were now gathering around their commander. Mary was amazed to see that they all looked at Zarathiel with deep respect and affection. "Commander," said the silver-marked dragon, "the fleet reports all Void Swarm. Vessels in this system have been destroyed or driven off. Casualties among our forces are minimal." Zarathiel nodded, but kept her attention on Mary. "This is Captain Korith," she said, gesturing to the silver dragon. "He leads my personal guard." Korith looked at Mary with curiosity. "So this is the human who saved our commander's life." "She did more than that," Zarathiel said. "She showed me what kindness looks like." By now, the people inside the diner had realized it was safe to come outside. They emerged slowly, staring in awe at the dragons who had saved them. The children were especially fascinated, pointing at the magnificent creatures with wide eyes. "These air dragons," whispered little Billy Johnson to his brother. "Real dragons." Korith overheard and knelt down to the children's level. Despite his fierce appearance, his voice was gentle. "We are Draconians," he corrected, "and we are honored to meet the humans that Mary Johnson protected." The formal words sounded strange coming from such a powerful creature, but Mary could see the sincerity in his golden eyes. These warriors had not just come to fight. They had come because one of their own had asked them to protect her friends. "How many ships did you bring?" asked Bill Henderson, his military training making him curious about the tactical situation. The entire Third Imperial Fleet, Zarathil answered. 327 vessels. The number sent a murmur through the crowd. The colony's entire population was only a few thousand people, and this dragon had brought an armada to save them. All of this, Mary said quietly, for one small colony? Zarathil turned to face her fully. All of this for the human who taught me that strength is not just about fighting. That sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to help a stranger. Another dragon approached, this one with blue markings along her wings. Commander, we're receiving reports from other systems. The Void Swarm has launched attacks in 17 different sectors. This was part of a coordinated assault. Zarathil's expression grew serious. How many worlds? At least 40 under attack. Some have already fallen. Mary felt her heart sink. This isn't over, is it? No, Zarathil said honestly. This was just the beginning. The swarm is making their final push. They mean to consume everything in this part of the galaxy. What will you do? Mary asked. Zarathil looked around it. The colony, at the people Mary had saved, at the small diner where she had learned about human kindness. We will fight, she said, but not alone this time. She activated a communication device on her wrist. This is Commander Zarathil to all fleet units. Prepare a message for transmission to the Galactic Coalition Council, Terran Defense Command, and all allied forces in this sector. Ready, Commander, came the reply. Zarathil looked at Mary as she spoke. Today, the Draconian Imperial Fleet fought alongside humans to defend innocent lives. We have seen their courage, their compassion, and their willingness to sacrifice. For others, we formally request immediate alliance talks with the human government. The war against the Void Swarm requires all civilized species to stand together. Mary stared at her friend in amazement. You're asking humans to join your war? I am asking humans to help us win it, Zarathil corrected. Your people have something mine have forgotten. You know how to work together, how to care. 6 months had passed since the day the dragons came to Haven's Rest. Mary stood on the observation deck of what had once been her small diner and looked out over the transformed colony. Where there had been 12 tables and 8 stools, there was now a massive complex that could feed thousands. The new building was beautiful, a blend of human architecture and draconian engineering. The main dining hall was enormous, with soaring ceilings that could accommodate even the largest dragons. There were smaller, more intimate spaces for quiet conversations, and private rooms where diplomats from different worlds could meet in comfort. But Mary's favorite part was still the original diner, which had been carefully preserved in the center of the complex. The yellow walls and earth flower pictures remained exactly as they had been the night she found Zarathil in the storm. It served as a reminder of how everything had started. The morning shift is ready, Mary, called Janet Walsh, one of the human cooks who had joined Mary's growing staff. Should we open the main hall? Mary nodded and watched as the doors opened to reveal the usual morning crowd. Dragons and humans moved together through the space, some heading for the traditional human breakfast section, others preferring the draconian meal areas. Many chose to sit at the mixed tables, where both species could try each other's food and continue the cultural exchange that had become Haven's Rest's greatest contribution to the Alliance. The sight still amazed Mary. When the first draconian engineers had arrived to rebuild the colony, interactions had been awkward and formal. The dragons were warriors who had known only discipline and duty. The humans were colonists who had never imagined sharing their world with beings from ancient legends. But food, Mary had discovered, was a universal language. It had started small. A curious dragon asking about human coffee. A human child offering a cookie to a homesick warrior. A shared meal between 2 engineers working on the same project. Slowly, barriers had come down, and friendships had formed. "Mary, we have a problem," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, the human liaison officer assigned to coordinate with the draconian forces. He approached her table with a worried expression. "What kind of problem?" Mary asked, setting down her coffee. "The good kind, actually. We just received word that the Galactic Coalition Council wants to send a delegation here to study what we've accomplished. They're calling Haven's Rest a model for interspecies cooperation." Mary laughed. "A problem that's too good is still a problem, I suppose. How many are coming?" 200 beings from 17 different species, including some we've never had contact with before. They want to see how humans and draconians learn to work together so quickly. Mary looked around the dining hall, where a dragon named Thane was teaching a group of human children how to count in the ancient draconian language, while nearby, a human grandmother was showing young dragon warriors how to knit scarves for the upcoming winter. "Well," she said, "I guess we'll need more tables." Zarethel approached from across the hall, moving through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone completely at home. She had changed over the past months. The rigid military bearing was still there, but she smiled more often now, and Mary had seen her laugh at human jokes and cry at human stories. "Good morning, my friend," Zarethel said, settling into the specially designed chair across from Mary. "I hear we are to become even more famous. Rodriguez told you about the delegation?" "My intelligence officers are very thorough," Zarethel said with a grin. "They are calling this place the miracle of Haven's Rest. They say it proves that different species can not only coexist, but thrive together." Mary shook her head. "It's not a miracle. It's just people getting to know each other." "You say just as if it is a small thing," Zarethel replied. "Do you know how long my people fought alone against the Void Swarm? 67 years. We lost hundreds of ships, thousands of warriors, entire worlds, all because we were too proud to ask for help or accept that others might fight beside us." Mary had heard this before, but it still made her sad. "And now?" "Now we have hope," Zarethel said simply. "The joint fleet operations had been more successful than anyone dreamed. Human tactics combined with draconian firepower have driven the swarm back in every engagement. We estimate the war will be over within 2 years." It was good news, but Mary could see something else in her friend's eyes. But success brings its own challenges. My people are excited about working with humans, some too excited. The High Council is concerned about maintaining draconian traditions while embracing these new relationships. Mary nodded. She had seen some of the tensions. Young dragons who wanted to adopt human customs. Traditional draconians who worried about losing their identity. It was not easy for any species to change quickly. "What do you think?" Mary asked. Zarethel looked around the dining hall, watching dragons and humans sharing meals and stories. "I think tradition is important, but not more important than growth. My people have been warriors for so long that we forgot we could be other things too. Teachers, friends, explorers, even cooks." She gestured toward the kitchen, where Chef Korath, a dragon who had discovered a passion for human baking, was teaching a mixed class how to make bread. The sight of a massive dragon carefully showing humans how to knead dough had become one of the most popular attractions for visitors. "Some of my officers have asked to extend their assignments here," Zarethel continued. "They want to learn more about human culture. A few have even requested permission to bring their families." Mary's eyes widened. "Dragon families? Here? Dragon children would love your earth-flower gardens," Zarethel said with a smile. "And I think human children would enjoy learning to fly." The idea of dragon and human children playing together was both wonderful and slightly terrifying. "We'd need bigger playgrounds," Mary said. "We would need many things," Zarethel agreed. But we would figure it out, together. A commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A group of human colonists had gathered around something. Their voices excited. Mary could see they were looking at a wall display that showed incoming ships. More arrivals? Mary asked Rodriguez as he hurried past. Better than that, he called back. It's the Centauri delegation. They want to join the Alliance. Mary felt a thrill of excitement. The Centaurians were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they had remained neutral in the war against the Void Swarm. If they were willing to join the fight, it would change everything. This is all happening so fast, Mary said to Zarathel. Change always seems fast when you are in the middle of it, Zarathel replied. But think about what we have accomplished. 6 months ago, my people and your people barely knew each other existed. Now we fight together, eat together, learn together. Soon we will have children growing up together. Mary looked around the dining hall again, seeing it with new eyes. Dragons and humans were sharing not just space, but ideas, stories, dreams. She watched a human doctor discussing medical techniques with a draconian healer. At another table, pilots from both species were planning joint training exercises. You know what the strangest part is? Mary said. What? I thought my life was over when my husband died. I came here to hide from the world, to serve soup to miners, and live quietly. I never imagined any of this. Zarathel reached across the table and gently touched Mary's hand with one large claw. You did not hide from the world, my friend. You opened your door to it, and when the world needed help, you were ready. I just did what felt right, Mary said. Yes, Zarathel agreed. That is exactly what makes you special. You see someone who needs help, and you help them. You see people who are hungry, and you feed them. You see strangers, and you make them feel welcome. A young dragon approached their table, moving with the careful respect that all of Zarathal's people showed. Their commander. Commander, the afternoon planning session is ready to begin. Zarathel nodded, but did not immediately rise. Mary, would you join us today? The council is discussing the new colony ships that will be sent to liberated Void Swarm worlds. They will need guidance on how to establish communities where different species can live together. Mary felt a flutter of nervousness. I'm not a diplomat or a city planner. I just run a diner. You created something here that no one thought was possible, Zarathel said firmly. Every world we liberate will need what you have built. Hope, friendship, and a place where people can come together as equals. Mary looked around her dining hall one more time. In a few hours, it would be full again. Dragons and humans sharing meals, telling stories, planning the future together. Children of both species running between the tables, playing games that combined the traditions of two worlds. It had all started with a simple act of kindness during a storm. One wounded dragon, one human who chose to help, and a friendship that had changed the course of galactic history. All right, Mary said, standing up. Let's go plan some communities. As they walked toward the conference rooms, Mary thought about the future. The war would end eventually, but the bonds that had formed here would last forever. Human children would grow up knowing dragons as friends and teachers. Dragon children would learn about compassion and cooperation from human neighbors. The galaxy was becoming a smaller, friendlier place, and it had all started in a little diner on the edge of Spa.